Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 257 of Real Blend, a podcast changing its name to Max later this year. On this week's show, I'm back from Star Wars Celebration, and I have a lot of information to share. Thank you, Kev. Renfield is hitting theaters, and so Ben Schwartz and Chris McKay are going to be joining the show. Ben Schwartz returning to the show, and Chris McKay also returning to the show. Did we have Chris on before?
For the Tomorrow War.
That's right. Oh my gosh, we've been doing this for so long. My name is Sean O'Connell. I'm the managing editor here at Cinema Blend, joined each week, as always, by my stellar co-hosts, Kev McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hello, Kev. How are you?
Sean, good to have you back from your London travels. Jacob, Gabriel, good to see all y'all, as always.
It's weird listening to the show as a non-participant, by the way. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It goes to show that we have an entertaining program, but it is a little bit strange. And I perked up every time you guys mention me, so thank you very much. The man is Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Did you get my shirt?
Yes, I did get your shirt.
Yeah.
It still looks really small, though. I just don't understand. No, I understand that, but like...
Jake
your
wears
shirt
baby
sizes
shirts,
and my shirt sizes are very, very different.
Like my brother has a 2-year-old, and I'm going to be sending those shirts to Jake.
I get the child's hand-me-downs.
Most people don't know this, but if you watch Fox 32 in Chicago, his suits are actually just body paint. He gets those painted on before he goes live.
Why do you think our ratings are so good?
Yeah.
So I will drop that in the mail to you. Yes, I did get your shirt, and then I also had to.
I'm going to buy yours then. That was the deal.
Which
I'm
one?
going to buy your shirt.
What shirt?
Did you get a shirt?
No, I didn't get one.
I texted you, buy yourself a shirt, and then I'll pay for your shirt.
Well, I'll buy a different shirt.
No,
what if I pick out like a different shirt?
No,
I didn't really like I didn't really care for the shirts that they had merchandise this year. They weren't really. There's nothing really that special. Hey, you know that I was sending you a flurry of text messages.
He was shopping for me, and as someone who hates shopping for clothes, the idea of shopping for someone else and then texting them information on another continent that's friendship.
Not just that, it was the time difference because you were in the West Coast.
Yeah, I was in Napa.
So it was a significant time difference.
Yeah.
And I had talked my way into that gift shop by going up to the security guard. And I showed them my wristband, and I was like, hey, I just have to go take some pictures for press, and skipped this very long line of people.
I can now testify in true confidence that the phrase, ooh, Sean's getting me a 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi t-shirt is not as sexy to your girlfriend as you think it is.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. She was a little disappointed. Let's say hi to Gabe Kovach, is sitting in the producer's chair. Hi, Gabe. How are you?
I'm good. How you boys doing? Welcome back, Sean. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you guys are watching us on YouTube to see what size shirt Jake is wearing, thank you for joining us. Hello. Welcome to the Friday Notification Crew. Head down, give us a like and a subscribe. Also, comment. We love comments. They help the show to grow. So let us know what you think about the episodes. After you listen to the interview with Ben Schwartz and Chris McKay, let us know how you guys feel about that. And then once you've gone to see Renfield this weekend, we want to hear your reviews. So drop them in the comments down below. And quite often the boys here will interact with you folks. If you've never been to the YouTube channel, it is youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. Of course, we're available all the different places where you get your podcast needs met, whether it be Spotify or Apple Podcast or iTunes and all that jazz. In addition, I missed this week's Real Blend Premium. What did you guys do?
We did an IMDb game.
Who won? Don't even tell me.
No, we can't say it. The kids won't know yet. It comes out Monday.
It makes me laugh that for the last premium, Jake wasn't there and Kevin and I tied.
Nobody wins. If I can't win, no one wins.
Yes. Check the description for information on how you can sign up for premium, which gets you, as always, a Monday episode, a newsletter, and then an ad-free version of the show. We have a lot to get to this week, so let's go right to our interview. Renfield is a Dracula movie coming out. I haven't seen it, but the boys have, and they're going to review it later on in the show.
Why do you say it like that? Yeah, of course it's a Dracula movie coming out.
Is it really? Well, I just don't know a lot about it. I didn't really pay attention to...
Renfield is a famous Dracula character.
Oh, really? Oh, Nicolas Hoult's character is Renfield.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is directed by Nicolas Cage's uncle, Francis Ford Coppola, I believe Nick Cage was supposed to play the Keanu Reeves part, I believe, originally. In that movie, the Renfield character is played by Tom Waits. Oh. So yeah, it's a very famous character within the Dracula world. And yeah, for people who aren't aware, he's essentially Dracula's henchman. Kind of does literally everything, and in the modern times, even his dry cleaning. So that's kind of part of the bit of the film. But Nick Cage, I read somewhere he's wanted to play this character for a long time, and in my interview for TV with him, I asked him, like, did you talk to Francis Ford Coppola or about what he did with Bram Stoker's? Did you model anything after Gary Oldman? And Cage started talking about how he modeled the character after his father, August. And it's funny, his Dracula kind of reminds me more of Castor Troy. There's like a lot of like eccentric aspects to the character. But yeah, so this interview is Chris McKay, Ben Schwartz. Ben's been on the show multiple times, After Party. Funny enough, and I said this in the interview, one of the last times we had Ben on the show, remember we couldn't use video of Ben, and there was a reason, because Ben had the tattoos still on his arms from the movie Renfield that he was shooting, and he's I can't have these out there publicly. So weirdly enough, then now full circle, he's back. We have one full video, and I do recommend the video component to this interview, which you're about to hear, because the beginning, Ben and Chris both take us around kind of their apartment a little bit and show us some cool things. So just, if audio sounds great, but if you get a chance, maybe after you listen to it, go back and check out the video.
There you go. Without further ado, Ben Schwartz and director Chris McKay joining us on behalf of Renfield.
Thanks for joining us. And I'm just going to get right into this. Well, first of all, because we have a visual aspect to our show now on YouTube, our backgrounds are all very interesting. Ben, you've been on our show multiple times. And the last time Ben was on here, actually, I got to say, he was actually wearing the tattoos that he was using to film this movie.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we weren't able to use video of him because the movie hadn't come out yet. It was still kind of in the works.
But now I don't have any tattoos.
I know. So I wanted to give our audience a real quick view. So Ben, what's behind you? And then Chris, I want to talk about your posters as well. But Ben, what are people seeing behind you right now?
Okay, right behind me right now are 3 improv posters. One in the middle is Ben Schwartz and Friends, and it's when I played the Beacon Theater in New York, which, by the way, I'm coming back to New York and playing Radio City Music Hall in September, which is very exciting. I've never heard of that place. It's kind of new, but it's going to be great. And these are all made by an artist named Dave Klock, who's a genius and does posters for like Childish Gambino and Grateful Dead. And then he also does comedy posters for me.
Is that King Kong? Is that you as King Kong in the middle?
Yeah, it's King Kong. And in the palm of his hand is me and my improvisers improvising for him, trying to make King Kong laugh from the top of the Empire State Building. I'm very excited. And then over here is a typewriter I got from a movie I did called Flora and Ulysses. And then over here is the typewriter Tom Hanks gave me because he's the best guy. And then I have a shoe of Sonic the Hedgehog in the middle.
This is so cool. This is so cool. Fun. And Chris, what about you? What are we seeing? Is that Scream to your right? Is it?
This is that one is Brian De Palma's Fury. It's a 7-foot. I'm a single man. You can tell I'm a single man. I've got a 7-foot tall poster of Brian De Palma's Fury, and then over here, Nick Hoult gave me a Horror of Dracula.
I love
poster, it. When we wrap. So yeah, I've got a giant Italian Horror of Dracula poster.
That's awesome. Well, our show is, as Ben knows, is designed for people who love filmmaking, people who love going to the movies, people who try to understand the filmmaking process. I want to dive into a lot of the practical effects you use in this film. The aspect ratio, the cinematography is incredible. Ben, you and I talked for TV about the tattoos, but I want to dive into that process as well. But first, you have a movie that's opening in theaters exclusively. We have seen people going back to the movies in mass numbers, or Top Gun, Avatar, Mario's crushing right now, Universal. And so I wanted to ask each of you, as we celebrate this kind of return to theaters and people kind of going back, and it's been nice to see, what your favorite theatrical experience memory is that comes to mind. And Chris, I'll start with you because you directed the film, and obviously this is a film that will be seen on the big screen for a lot of people. So what's that memory for you? What do you go back to, that first one, you go, man, that was so cool to see with a crowd?
Yeah, seeing Star Wars when I was a little kid, that was like one of my, that was a huge memory for me because, for a lot of reasons, the movie, obviously works and plays and all that kind of thing. It's great and great fun. And, no one had ever seen anything like that before. But like Lucas, during the trench run, used all those point of view shots. And as a kid, I'm transported into the trench, you know what I mean? And so I remember as a kid, like, thinking you're seeing this point of view and you're going through the trench. And I just remember even just sort of like kind of like in my seat and as a little kid, like making noise, like, oh my God, I'm in this, I'm in this fucking, movie. So that was a big experience for me. And then like as an adult, probably seeing Blue Velvet or,
David Lynch.
Yeah. Reservoir Dogs was a really great movie experience. I took a date to go see David Cronenberg's Crash. That was a really bad experience.
James Spader, right?
James Spader, where they were having sex with automobiles. Yeah, I took a date to that. That was a first date. That was a big mistake.
You should take that date to go see Titan next time. Or Titan, whatever that movie was called. Whatever that movie was.
I haven't seen you in 20 years.
Ben, what about you, man? What was a theatrical experience for you?
I remember watching, I don't know if it was the first or second Back to the Future, and that being an enormous deal, but one of the biggest ones for me was Jurassic Park was the movie I saw most times in theater because I saw it and it felt like I was on a ride. It felt like I was at like Disneyland on a ride and I couldn't believe it. And I went 5 times or something like that. I kept going back because the experience of actually being in the theater and ingesting it on such a big screen, but also like, I mean, remember when like the IMAX is big or like 70 millimeter and like, Dark Knight comes out and like all of a sudden you're like, I remember you go to one of the theaters just to try to see the trailer for Dark Knight.
The prologue.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, you talking about the one with Bane, the prologue with Bane and like for Rises?
But didn't they also have the one where the Joker, the very first 8 minutes of the scene where Joker robs that was crazy. But also Bane falling, that's the one where they fall out of the, like a huge, anything. Yeah. So it's like, those are some of the best experiences. And then honestly, Marvel movies, like recently, like to be around and something happened that all of us care about characters and then something enormous happens. And then all of us respond together or all of us gasp at a post-credit sequence. So, I miss it. So I have so many memories. I also have memories of being at like an empty theater, seeing Airheads, and it was just me and my friend Mark, and nobody else was in the theater, and we'd run up and down the aisles. I also have a memory of like someone getting arrested at the theater and getting pulled out because they were pulling down their pants during the net with Sandra Bullock in the Bronx when me and my dad were there. Yeah, so it's like I have so many wonderful. I remember my dad is very South Bronx guy. And I saw a guy getting dragged. I've never in my life. And it made me so uncomfortable when I was young. I don't know when the net came out. But I wasn't like, I wasn't 18 or something like that. And so dragged out and an usher, which, places don't even have anymore. And we're in some theater in the Bronx. And I go, Dad, what? And the guy had a handle of vodka in one hand and his pants around his ankles. And the guy handled vodka in Vince. And I go, what happened? And my dad's like, the guy was caught jerking off. Come on, let's watch. And that was like, it was like not even my dad's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Come on.
That's like a Goodfellas-esque life lesson.
That's exactly right.
Hashtag cinema. First of all, I want to dive into some of the practical effects because one of the great things about watching this film is everything felt real. Like, I mean, the makeup on Nick Cage was unbelievable. The tattoos on Ben, just everything about the environment felt practical and insanely there. And you have some of the coolest gore effects I've probably seen since From Dusk Till Dawn. Like I remember seeing the ending act of Dusk Till Dawn there, and it just reminded me of those practical effects that Rodriguez did back then. And so I want to go to you, Chris, first about just some of the practical effects. What was the coolest or the craziest gore effect that you had, and how it was achieved, and like in terms of like because the explosions and the blood and like the arms, it's just awesome. So I was just curious what that was like for you to be able to do those practically, and was there one that was kind of more interestingly to see in person?
Yeah, well, we squibbed up Ben and shot and pulled him about 15 feet across the room when he got shot with a shotgun. That was a lot of fun.
First time I've ever done that.
Yeah, you did a great job too. You were awesome.
Do you really get yanked in something like that? Like how does
there's a rope there. Yeah. There's a bunch of times I got yanked in this because I get my ass kicked. Chris gave me a character that I just get my butt kicked in every scene I'm in. But for that one, I get shot. There's like a wire up my body, so I get shot and blood comes out, and then I jump back at the same time. There's squibs on Ben, and there were squibs on the door behind Ben. Oh, that's right. He's actually getting pulled towards the door. That's also like exploding squibs and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. But like the stuff that
it's a combination of like what Chris Brewster did, who was the stunt coordinator, second unit director, and what Christian Tinsley did, who's the makeup effects artist, and ran the whole makeup team as well as doing all of the special makeup and things like that. And he did some amazing work. I mean, if you watch the stuff that he did like on Westworld, there's some really brutal stuff that he did on that show, and I was really impressed with like what he's done. He's such a good guy, and he we obviously wanted to do the arm rip and that stuff like that. And that was kind of in the script, but there was an escalation that I knew I wanted him to like be beating guys up with the arm and using the arms as spears and stuff like that. And then I wanted to get to I wanted to keep escalating it. So we did that face rip, which was something that we did practically, where we had a guy and they did this, really interesting, makeup appliance on his face, but he was completely blind. So that guy had to be like walked into.
Wow.
Like that. So that when we did that gag, where Nick pulls the face off, that guy's kind of basically like standing there completely because he can't see anything. So we had to sort of get him in place and then do the rip. But that was.
And Chris, what about when Hoult punches off that dude's head?
Yeah, we punched off Apache Joe. That was a lot of fun. And then also like, having the, head hit the car with Ben and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, we built up a full dummy suit that had a cannon, blood cannon with a bunch of gallons of blood inside it. And, just did and then had the same kind of harness that, Ben was on when he got, ratcheted across the room. We had that on the back of the head of the dummy head. So when Nick hit it, it goes flying and the explosion happens. And that stuff was great. That was a lot of fun.
And Ben, for you as an actor to have that access to practical effects, I mean, like obviously there's so much going on today with CGI, but CGI ends up being a tool. Like in Microsoft Paint, it should be something you go to add to what you're doing. But getting things in camera as an actor, I mean, that's got to be today, at least today in today's times, to have it there for you must be incredible.
It's remarkable. It's so fun. And also Chris is great with the world and also playing with it. Also building the sets. The sets are so practical that a layer of Dracula is all set up. Like it's crazy. There's blood bags everywhere and there's all these things. And then even there's the like hideout for the Lobos, it's decked out. There's guns on the walls. There's a see-through coffin that my dad, a real extra, sat in for every single scene. There's a guy just sitting for every scene for the thing. And there's little holes in it so we can obviously breathe. But it's like the attention to detail is amazing. Then when we're on there and playing, I could play with anything. I could go anywhere. It doesn't matter. Like when you do CG stuff, it's a little bit, sometimes you're on a green screen and you have no idea what the hell's going on. But there's so much stuff that Chris filmed. There's so much wonderful stuff, but it's a very lean and awesome movie right now. But there's some stuff that, obviously had to get cut for time. But there's things where like I'm interacting with, there's a take where I like by mistake smashed a glass off a table. We just kept rolling and like, because there's the world to play with. And Chris also wants you to be creative. He comes from a world of like, look at the animated stuff he's done, look at the work he's done on Robot Chicken, look at like the creative process. I remember we had this one scene where I jump out of my car and cops are chasing me and I'm throwing cocaine at the cops. And then Chris is like, you know what you should do? Let's get yourself in this random car, go through it. And then Chris opened the car, went through it. Like you don't see directors get that dirty. And it's so fun to work with someone who's so passionate because we're both like, what would be the funniest thing to happen? What would make this scene the best thing we could do? Okay, we got the script. What else can we play with? And then in the end, they can figure out what they want to use or not. But it's like, it was amazing to be practically in that world. You got to play as an improviser. You get to play with everything. And then after we do the script, Chris giving you the opportunity to go, okay, go do your thing. And it was really, really fun. Although night shoots, every day being a night shoot is not easy. That is tough. I don't know how.
Ben, that line that Ben says when he leaves the car, I've got a prescription for this shit. That's all Ben Schwartz improv. That's one of the funniest bits for me in the movie. I think it's really
and for people listening right now, if you've never seen Ben's improv show, highly recommend it. He's going on tour. Check out his Instagram for
Ben
the
Schwartz and Friends. Yeah, it's on rejectedjokes.com.
It's so great. I got to see you at the Warner Theater here in DC. It is one of the craziest and most entertaining shows you'll ever see. And I'm not saying that just because, Ben's been on the show before. I mean it genuinely. If you want just a great night out, it's awesome. Chris, last time we had you on the show is Tomorrow War, and your filmmaking career has been amazing, and just the choices that you made, everything's been different, which I really love. But Lego Batman movie, obviously, and then you do Tomorrow War, and now I'm curious like what those films taught you that you could still use here. I mean, they're very different genres. Obviously, one's animated, one's live action, and then you're dealing with different thematics, different characters, different ideas. But, even with Lego Batman movie, you're dealing with iconic characters. Dracula's an iconic character. So I'm just curious, is there anything you learned on something like Lego Batman movie that actually you could still use here in a film like this?
Yeah, I mean, trust your crew, trust your cast. I think that's the thing that hopefully every filmmaker gets to at some point. Is really, and if you listen to director's commentary, there's one that's really wonderful that Darren Aronofsky did when he was for Pi, for his first movie, and it's a really great commentary because he talks a lot about how he was kind of upset with one of the actors because he thought the guy wasn't giving him anything. And he was kind of sitting on the guy, when he was directing him. And then he went back to post and he was looking at all this wonderful stuff the guy was giving him. And for him, that was a big wake up call. Like, it's like, sometimes you have these preconceived notions when you come on set and you want it to be a certain way and you think that's the only way it can get done, but it's actually not the only way. And there's really wonderful stuff that if you're open to it, that the cast and the crew and everybody can kind of bring to the table. And I think once you start getting comfortable with that and you start sort of loving that, you find that you make stuff better and better. And one of the things, when you're working on an animated movie, obviously you're working with a massive crew. I mean, we're working with a massive crew on live action, but I think in animations you have certain touch points with everybody in the crew, and so you really are building something together and using everyone's knowledge and love of movies. And it's filmmaking in slow motion, so the animators have a lot of that you're in some way you're the producer of whatever that shot or that scene that the animator is doing, because they're it's in Ben and I experienced this on Robot Chicken, where it's like every animator, we talk about the joke, we talk about the scene and some blocking, but every leaf that blows by, every little thing that's going to happen on that set, the animators are really charging, and they can really, if you have a communicated tone to them, or we're not sort of on the same wavelength, they can kind of go the wrong way. But if you are again, if you find a way to like collaborate in a really true way, you can get a lot out of your team, and they will give you a lot for the movie. And that's something I think is a really important lesson.
Chris, you purposely pick different genres. Like, once you do a genre, you're like, are you like, all right, now I'm not going to I've done this kind of horror, gory thing now. So it's like, I want to kind of lean, or no, you're just like, whatever the script comes in. Or you like, what, I did a Lego Batman. I don't want to do another animator for my next one. I'm going to do this big Tomorrow War. Okay, now we did this big action alien. I don't want to do that. Are you thinking like that? Or are you just taking whatever your favorite script is that come in? I probably like challenges, and I probably get bored a lot. So like but honestly, like for Tomorrow War, I just finished Lego Batman, Lego Batman was the last thing I'd worked on as a director, but I'd sort of started developing things, and I was developing Borderlands for Lionsgate and Dungeons and Dragons and something called Amulet, and then Tomorrow War kind of came along, and I read the script, and it was like one of these things where it was like a moving train, and you had
that movie's awesome, by the way. That movie's awesome. Oh, that movie's awesome. I love Tomorrow War. But
it kind of came along. It's like, oh yeah, we've got a date and a schedule, and I really like the script. The script needed to work at the time. It was very nihilistic. There was no Sam Richardson joke character in the movie or any of that kind of thing. It needed a lot of stuff to be more of like and there was no action scenes in it. But that kind of came along. And so unfortunately I had to leave those other projects, but I would have loved to have done, Dungeons & Dragons, I got a story credit on, but I would have loved to have worked on that movie, because that movie, those guys kind of just took the ball and ran with it and made something that was in the spirit of what we'd sort of talked about, make it an Ocean's 11 movie, make it really fun, and make it about these characters. And because the thing that I wanted to make sure we didn't do is don't worry about that it's Dungeons & Dragons. Don't worry about the homework. You don't want people to think they've got to do homework to watch this movie. Make it fun. Make it a heist movie that's a lot of fun. And those guys did a really great job and took the ball and ran with it. And it's really amazing.
I feel like a lot of people in generationally have a certain decade or time period where Nick Cage was a big deal to them, right? Like, and for me, it hit me right in the 90s. I think I watched Face Off 47 times on my VHS, but it was that run of Con Air, Face Off, and The Rock.
Yeah, those are three for me too.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I wanted to ask, because and for each of you, because I mean, he's such a. For me, he's just that actor. Like I got Castor Troy vibes sometimes from the Dracula version he was playing, because there were like lines. I know that he's channeling his father, and one of the cool things about that. But there's Castor vibes a little bit in the way he moves, and so I was just curious for you, Ben, like what your memories of that time, because those are my three, and it was iconic. It was everything. Like Con Air, Rock, and Face Off were just the ultimate Cage.
You and I are very, very similar. I mean, we've spent time together and talked. I love chatting with you because we have like the same cinephile knowledge of like, these are the ones that affect me, but I'm so aware. I love Raising Arizona. Adaptation, I watched twice in a row. The second it was over, I started again. I couldn't believe how strong that movie was. But The Rock, Face Off, and Con Air. And did I tell you I watched Con Air with John Malkovich in a theater?
You told me this when I interviewed you for Space Force.
The best thing in the world. But tell the story. This is cool. We were at Space Force. We were filming in Vancouver. It was during the pandemic still, and so at the hotel I was staying at, they had a movie theater, and so I would ask if I could rent it out and invite the cast over, and we could watch movies. And John was going to come, and then Tony's like, "We gotta watch Con Air with him. We got it." And I was like, "John, do you want to watch Con Air?" And he's like, "Okay." And then Carell's like, "Okay, if he's watching Con Air, I'm coming." So we're all in this little hotel thing, and he had I don't think he'd seen the movie since the premiere. So it was like it was great to talk to him about everything. It's amazing.
The virus.
It's so funny, the Face Off thing. And by the way, Chris McKay might have done this without me even knowing, but there was a review I got, it was an interview I got where they're like, "My God, dude, you're Castor Troy in this. You have gold guns. You got your you're like you're unhinged. I was like, oh my God. And I didn't think about it when we were shooting it, but afterwards, you look at some of the pictures of my guy, like all in red, holding two gold guns, like just being a badass and being unhinged, and it made me so happy. I hope that Cage. I don't know if he was in that interview, but I was like, oh my God, yeah, a little bit. But I mean, that movie, he goes full Cage. I mean, it makes me want to. I had like a couple scenes with him in this one. We had the best time. He was so interested in improv and the stuff I did that he really wanted to do more of it with me. And I was like, I almost want to find a movie where we have like an outline and then him and I just go bananas for an hour and a half and see what happens. Cause he's so unpredictable. And as an improviser, my joy is to try to make, go along with whatever the other person's saying. I have no idea what it would look like. It would be so fun.
Dude, I would watch Middleditch, Schwartz, and Cage in 2 seconds. If that goes to Netflix, I would.
I should ask Nick Cage to play in Ben Schwartz and Friends. I did ask him once, but he didn't. That would be crazy.
I will come to that show. I don't care where it is. And Chris, for you, is it that same era of movies? Like, because you mentioned Raising Arizona, Ben. Raising Arizona is still my favorite Coen Brothers movie. I mean, I think No Country's like the best movie they ever made, but I think Raising Arizona might be my favorite. But I mean, it's iconic to think about the different decades that he's affected people. So what was that for you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw, the early stuff like the Raising Arizonas and Moonstruck and Birdie and all that kind of thing. But I think the stuff that made the most impression on me, I really loved him in The Rock. I really thought that he did such a good job. And because that was like one of the first movies that he did where it's like, okay, this is just a broad audience movie. That's the first time he's kind of going and doing that. Because everything else was, yes, Moonstruck became like a big deal, but it's a movie written by a playwright. It's, it's not, that wasn't like a sure thing, you know what I mean? The box office, maybe, Cher was kind of coming up and stuff like that. But like that movie was like, The Rock is like pitched, it's high concept, Jerry Bruckheimer, like all that stuff. And he's just that's just a testament to like what a good actor he is and just what a movie star he is, a guy who can just have chemistry
That's right.
with everybody and chemistry with the camera. Like Ben has this too, but like what's really interesting is that like he kind of knows a little bit of like he can like sense the tone that the movie or the scene is in, and he can just kind of find like it's like a radio dial and just finding like, okay, so like dialing in like the right tone. Okay, got it. I get what the tone this fucking thing is. Cool. And I'm gonna do this because it's like, he shouldn't be as romantic as he is in Moonstruck or something like It Could Happen to You, but he's so good. And It Could Happen to You is just like, he's just playing a cop. Like it's a Frank Capra type movie. And he's so good in that movie and so charming. And it's just like, it's a million miles away from Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call,
that was good, by the way.
I love that movie.
I loved his Bad Lieutenant. I thought it was, Keitel's is classic, but I thought Cage's was Pig. How good was freaking Pig, man? Pig
was incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Incredible.
He is, and even, oh my gosh, Mandy was incredible. So I want to bring up Marco Beltrami because I think he's a brilliant, brilliant composer.
Yeah.
And the work he did with, I think he did Krasinski's Quiet Place.
Yep.
I think
Quiet Place is a great score. Oh my God.
Great score.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask this question in two different ways for each of you. Ben, like, I can't imagine what it would feel like to do a film, do all the work you put into it, and then finally see your performance set to music. I can't imagine emotionally what that must feel like to then see how it elevates or how it brings a different depth to your performance. So just speaking on Beltrami specifically, but obviously with the work he did here, but is there a score that you remember hearing your performance set to that you remember moving you in a very specific way?
Great question. So I am obsessed with film scores. I'm one of my close friends is Mike Giacchino, and so I get to go to live recordings all the time. And because he knows that I'm so into it, he'll invite me to he's doing I've seen so many. And then when he did Jurassic World, like I got to go in there and watch. It's just insane. And there's like two that you can watch from beyond Chris knows better than I do, but you can watch from beyond the glass. But every now and then Giacchino's like, do you want to get in there with the orchestra and just sit like right next to them? And they're doing a sound cue and you'll know nothing about the movie and just see a 30, 40 second clip or a minute and a half clip, and you'll start crying because the music is so overwhelming and beautiful. I have film scores on vinyl. I listened to film scores like all when I was a kid in my car. I'd always have the Back to the Future score on, or like I had episode 1. I love that. Like, ba, 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 ba. Like I'm obsessed. But for me, one of the big ones was for Sonic. This is because of how separate it is for Sonic when I'm doing my voiceover. At the beginning, you do it to nothing, and then you do it to match, and then you start improvising a bunch, and then you start, and then you start to see Sonic slowly turn into Sonic, but it's the farthest away from like a blueprint to a final, as opposed to when we're doing Renfield. I know what the scene looks like. I'm looking on the monitor afterwards. I got to kind of see like, I can't wait to see what this looks like with music. To give the Renfield example, there's a fight scene at the end of the movie that it follows the two sets of characters having huge moments, and it's so. The music and the composition, the editing of that is so incredible that when I watched that, and it's very close to the end of the film, I was like overwhelmed because there's so much action going on and I'm not used to doing action stuff. And the music and the way that Chris shot it was selling it so much that I was so blown away and I felt so transported. I love that. But for me, Sonic, the first or second one, the idea that I kind of just saying voice, and then when I'm watching near the end and the music is in and Sonic is finally rendered, which takes a long process, I was overwhelmed because you don't really know what that first one was going to look like until they do it. Same with his Lego Batman movie. It's like until everything is finalized and I'm not looking at little triangles moving around. It's like incredible. So that Sonic one for me was huge. And then the fight sequence in the third act of Renfield was enormous. I've never been a part of that type of thing before. And I was like, God, I hope I sold this well enough. And then the way Chris and everybody put that together, where it's like, it's two different fights happening at the same time. It's gorgeous. You know what I'm talking about, McKay, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a really great score that Marco did there. That's a huge thing in the editorial department deserves a huge shout out too, because those guys did a great job of balancing the back and forth between what's happening upstairs with Awkwafina and Cage and what's happening with you and Hoult downstairs.
Yeah. And that's my question for you, because I feel like, and I've said this a lot, I've been saying this for years, that scores are leading characters in films. You look at the way the way Nolan uses Zimmer or whoever he's using in his movies. These scores end up becoming atmospheric characters. Like, I think one of the most great examples of this was what Reznor and Ross did with Social Network, just because it was the heartbeat of the film.
That's a great example.
It was just like the way it moved. It just made those scenes like, and again, like they didn't have it there, I would imagine, when they were shooting. So for you as a filmmaker, do you direct your composer like you would direct an actor? Because if the composer's job is essentially to bring character aspects and atmosphere to the scene and elevate emotion or bring a certain emotion. It feels like the score almost has arcs like the actors do. And I just wonder, like, do you look at it the same way? Like, do you talk to your composer and say, I need this from you emotionally and that from you? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly that's the best version of the way that it should go. You should talk about, I mean, honestly, I believe you should talk to every crew member, you should talk to your DP, you should talk to your editor, you should talk to, everyone, should be talk to in terms of, treat them like that they are, like the way you talk to an actor, because I think that's, that's why for me, that's how the best way to inspire people. It's when people were when I was an editor and people were talking to me, I would, I always want to what you want to get out of the scene. I know what the footage is. I know what the script says, but tell me, like, what do you want the scene to feel like? You know what I mean? What do you want this costume to feel like? Or what's the idea behind this guy? That kind of thing. Like that to me is, what I think is, is the best way to talk to anybody when you're dealing with a crew. But like, when you're talking to, when we're talking about Marco, and Marco's career is like, I'd even forgotten that he had just done like Ford versus Ferrari. But like he's done so many movies, obviously did a lot in the horror space because he worked for Wes Craven for so long and did, basically all of Wes's stuff at a certain point. Maybe it was the first Scream or
he did Scream. That's right. He did Scream. I forgot he did Scream.
Wow. He did all of the Scream. He did all the Scream movies, which is really interesting because it's like, because that has to play like an Agatha Christie mystery sometimes, as well as like, guys hanging out and that sort of thing, as well as the suspense, moments and things like that. Because there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of balancing act but his Quiet Place. I mean, I was just blown away by what he did with Quiet Place, and when we use a lot of that for Temp when we were doing Tomorrow War, because there's just so much good, and he does a lot of really good. Like modern, interesting, like and when you're talking about like Atticus and Trent Reznor, what I love about and Zimmer too, what I love about what those guys do and what Marco does and what Lauren Balfe does, who I work with a lot, they work in kind of the world of composing as well as sound design, and Lauren Balfe had was worked on the Zimmer score for Dunkirk, and I think that's a wonderful score, and the way they use time and the ticking stuff and that sort of thing. And so there's this handoff between sound design and score, and I'm really fortunate that I also work with some really great sound designers and the way they play, and we gathering everyone together to kind of collaborate and kind of go, no, you take this, no, we'll take that piece, da da da. That's where you can something really magical can happen, and that's what I think. Some of the best composers, like you're talking about, they really kind of work with the sound team, the sound design team, and they really create something that's a little bit of both. That sometimes you can't even tell where the sound design starts and the music stops and that kind of thing. It's really that's the stuff I feel like is just really makes movies lift off the screen.
I agree. I'll get you guys out of here on this one because I find this really interesting. Like you have this idea of like, I am enough. I deserve, full happiness. And you're also dealing with narcissism in the film and finding your self-discovery and kind of like taking, it's a really interesting thematics that you actually have going on in this film outside of all the insanity that takes place in it. To me, that's what makes movies so great is if you can find a grounded element in a fantasy or in an over the top aspect of certain things. It's just kind of to me, it's really good filmmaking. And I want to ask each of you, there's got to be a catharsis that you find in this process, in terms of like your own catharsis in your own life. Like Ben, with your character, he's so over the top and so insane in sequences. I wonder what catharsis that brings you in your own life to play that out.
I love part of the reason why I do. Part of the reason why I love acting. Part of the reason why I do voiceover is you just get to. It's just you get to like, first of all, you get to be different versions of yourself. You get to be exaggerated versions of yourself. I've never shot guns in real life. I don't really fight people. If we're in a basketball court, I'll push somebody if I need to. But I don't know how to do that stuff. And so like this character for me was just like there's no filter on him. So he's just like this, and but the best part is the way that you make it a character that hopefully people care about is you tie it to something. You see that he's trying to just impress his mom. He's trying to get anybody to like him. He's trying so hard to get his friends and his mom to respect him, that he'll do anything. He'll go and kill somebody. But we had great moments, and there's this, it got cut down quite a bit, but there's this great moment where I stick up the restaurant and I go to Awkwafina's character and I get in there, and there's like a fun Joker moment we had where I go all the way around her and I get really close, and Chris got right in my face and got 2 cameras and we're winding on each other, and we did it for 3 days. It was like the most fun ever, but it was really fun to get like so crazy and dialed in and like really to try to feel those emotions, because I get to do comedy so much that when I'm given the challenge of try to make this funny, but now let's try to make this real. This isn't funny anymore. He's really trying to terrify her. And that scene at the beginning started with a bunch of comedy where I'm like yelling at all the people. And then when I see her, I start really getting into it, and we just zone in and we lock in, and I become kind of a maniac. And so that stuff was really, really fun, and really, I guess it is cathartic, because I'm not that person. I'm not a very aggressive type person, but to let out stuff like that, it's fun. It's just also fun to try different things. You know what I mean? You don't want to get so comfortable. I remember Jane Fonda did my improv show once, and I said, "Why did you say yes to doing this?" And she goes, "Because I got to do stuff that scares me. What am I doing if I'm not doing stuff that scares me? I can't keep doing it." And so I thought that was really smart. And so I like trying to flex other muscles. I like trying to get stronger in other areas. And this was definitely a version of that. And to get out all that stuff. It's the same with like yelling scenes, but it's the same with like big laughter scenes in other movies. Like, it's just so fun to express yourself and to try to, make it a little bit contagious.
Yeah, definitely. And for Chris, for you at the end of the filmmaking process, do you find a certain catharsis or a therapeutic aspect of, like, once you finish it and it's done, it's out there? Like, does it give you a certain catharsis?
Absolutely. I just want to say one thing about Ben. Like, the Ben's performance in this movie, one of the things we're really happy with,
unrecognizable,
really proud of. Yeah, is that people really are responding to Ben and seeing him in a different way. Like, that's something that's really, because he did a lot of. I mean, Ben's amazing because he can, and that's the thing I needed. Somebody who could flow back and forth, be funny, and then take it into a serious space, take it in drama, to be intimidating, to try to intimidate Awkwafina, but then also be this guy who was intimidated by his mom and all that kind of thing. And then again, make it funny and be able to flow back and forth from one part of the scene to another. And I'm really happy that people are noticing Ben in this thing, because he did such a fucking good job.
Thanks.
Really happy. But as far as like cathartic, I mean, look, if you're a filmmaker and you're not learning something about yourself in the process of making this movie, not trying to trying to like figure out what your strengths are and like buttress your weaknesses and things like that, and you're not really listening to like, hey, here's something you can learn, from this experience, or here's something. Oh, cool! I've got an opportunity to do that in this thing. Then you're kind of sleepwalking through life. I think if you call yourself a filmmaker, an artist, or whatever, like, I think you have to use these opportunities to grow and be really aware of yourself, as well as aware of like the team that you're leading, because you gotta hopefully you're growing in the same way that the team is hopefully growing, like a coach or something like that, where you're hopefully helping everybody kind of like find something, new and supporting, their growth. So that to me, like, I hope to never not be listening in the process to what a movie can teach you. It's been the most.
And I think you can't just have action and gore. You got to have what Chris does, and you got to have the heart between the characters. You got to care. My character can't just be a maniac. The Joker just can't be the Joker. There has to be something underneath that's driving these characters, or you're not going to care. Same with the theme of the film. You can make movies like that, but I think the ones that really that really attach us are the ones that have these underwriting. Like Dracula's character even feels like, you can see Nick Hoult obviously being like, oh God, I feel Renfield rather feeling like, oh my God, I'm under the leadership of this person. I can't break out. And it's such a relatable thing. Someone who wants to get out of their job, someone that feels their boss, someone that feels that their partner is weighing them down. But also you see like the pettiness in Dracula too, being like this guy, like, it's amazing. Like, if you just saw Dracula always feeling so over everybody, but he's like, are you kidding me? You want to leave me? Are you kidding? And you see the pettiness, and that's what makes the meat in that character. And it's like, it's so I think that's when things get really fun, and that's when I think people really get to rewatch a bunch. Because if you don't do that, it's just you're just watching set pieces. You know what I mean? And waiting for the next set piece. But when you give someone some meat and potatoes, that's what I try to do with my writing. You always try to. Then you care even more about the moment. If you give them enough about the character, then they're going to care what happens during that fight, as opposed to just watching a fight. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's all narratively driven. Well, listen, I got to get you guys out of here. I know Chris said you have another interview to get to. It was a pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you for being on Real Blend. Both of you returning guests, which is amazing. So we appreciate you coming on, and thank you for making films that make people want to go to the theaters. And thank you for everything you said about filmmaking. Our audience is going to be really excited to hear this one. So appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You know how much I love you.
Thank you so much to our good friends at Universal for hooking us up with that interview with Ben and Chris on behalf of Renfield. Like I said, the boys are going to review that later on in the show. I didn't get a chance to see it, being at Star Wars Celebration, which is our transition into the next talking point. All of the things that we learned. What number is this for you? That's a good question. I think it's like 5.
5? Because I mean, obviously the origins of this show have ties to Star Wars Celebration.
They do, yes. So I've done 2 in London. I did the one in Orlando, and I did the one in Chicago. That might be it. Maybe that's those 4. And
the
Jake
Chicago one we were all there for, which was cool.
Was fantastic.
Yes, and everybody was discussing that one because of the weather that sunk us all in on that.
The weather that I think came down at a perfect time, because remember, it was an insane snowstorm on the night of the Game of Thrones premiere.
Yeah, we all watched it together. All of us watched it together?
Or no, because Sean left. That's how badly Sean didn't want to hang out with us. He left in a snowstorm.
But then didn't he get stuck anyways in another state?
St. Louis. Yeah.
To be fair, Sean couldn't watch the finale with us because he was recording a reaction series at the time.
That's true.
No, it was the premiere.
Sean said.
Yeah, but I was still reacting to it.
Oh, boo freaking who.
I was reacting to it live. Okay. You guys don't understand. The moment an event ends, I can't get out of that location fast enough. I'm legitimately scratching and clawing to get away from the event.
Says the guy who spent like 8 days in London.
Yeah, I was there for a really long time. And so the big takeaway.
Why were you there for so long?
I think because of Easter Sunday, they stretched the convention to Monday. So it was like instead of being a Thursday to Sunday thing, it became a Thursday to Monday thing, which was too long. And then the event that they wanted us to stay for Monday was like a Star Wars Visions Volume 2, which is like an okay show. But I was like, Disney paid a lot to keep us here for that amount of time. It wasn't like Mandalorian or Ahsoka or something like that. So I wanted to get into the 3 movies that were announced, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on this. And Jake, I'll start with you because when this announcement came out, the way that it was revealed, and I don't know if you were paying attention to it in real time, but this graphic came up of this this timeline, essentially, of the different periods that Star Wars and Lucasfilm are going to be focusing on moving forward. And they announced that James Mangold was going to be making a movie, Dave Filoni was going to make a movie, and then I don't remember the name of the other director. She's a writer primarily, and this is her first directorial, or she did a documentary.
Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
Okay. She is going to be doing a film set 15 years past Rise of Skywalker, and that's when they announced that Daisy Ridley would be returning as Rey. But when they put all the graphics up, it legitimately made it sound like they had 9 movies coming, like that each of those time periods was a different movie, and they were just revealing the directors for 3 of them. Did you feel that way at all, or did you catch up with all the news later?
Well, you have to keep in mind a lot of that stuff, because I was in not just a different time zone from London, but a different time zone than where I'm at. So by the time I was in Napa on a personal trip, so by the time I woke up there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, it had already blown up. Like my phone, it had 10,000 notifications, and when you work in news, that's either a very good thing or a very bad thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, I don't want to be negative Nancy, but like, honestly, I can't help but feel a little bit like, I don't know, they've announced so many things that have never come to fruition. So I will believe that these things are happening, not even when they're filming, like when I'm sitting in the theater and it's playing in front of me, I will believe that it's a reality. But till then, it's just a thing that they're talking about, just like every other thing that they've talked about that never happened. I mean, if you can go as far as shooting a huge announcement video with Patty Jenkins and then never make that movie, you can announce it at Star Wars Celebration and never make it. So I don't know. That's why it's hard for me to get truly excited about any of this.
And that's kind of like that goes to the whole idea of stakes and emotional ties to these situations. Like the Patty Jenkins video, you don't make a video like that and then just like cancel it. I mean, it's crazy to me. And then like today, as we're recording, they and this goes to Sean's opening joke, they changed the HBO Max just to Max, and then they just announced like 55 things or something like that. And I was just sitting there on my Twitter going, I can't keep up with this. And I'm in this industry, and I don't know how an average consumer outside of somebody who works in the industry is even keeping track of this.
I mean, and to speak to your point, Kevin, like just while you were talking about that, I've jotted down 6 off the top of my head projects that they've announced. The Taika Waititi movie, the Kevin Feige movie, the Patty Jenkins movie, the Rian Johnson trilogy, the film from the Game of Thrones guys, and Damon Lindelof was recently working on a Star Wars movie, and none of those are coming to fruition. Now, Kathleen Kennedy, during the press line for this, she did say that Taika is still currently writing his movie and she's still interested in producing it. She said that Patty Jenkins's Rogue Squadron could actually become a series. They're not abandoning that completely. And then with Rian Johnson, she said, you know, he's still sort of moving forward with what he wants to do. I feel like the Game of Thrones guys and the Damon Lindelof project has now become the James Mangold film, which is going to be set 25,000 years before the prequel trilogy. Like he said, to get as far away from Star Wars as possible, I want to go just away from it all. And I'm going to tell a story.
A really long time ago in a galaxy far, far away?
Exactly. Yes.
The lead character is still a Skywalker.
Really yeah. Palpatine is baby Palpatine.
Somehow Palpatine is back.
So assuming that Mangold makes this movie, which he has also confirmed that he's doing both a Bob Dylan film next with Timothée Chalamet playing Bob Dylan.
That I'm interested in.
Around the period when Dylan transitions from acoustic to electric, and that Chalamet is going to be doing. I didn't
realize just how much Timothée Chalamet looks like Bob Dylan.
Dude, yeah, that side by side of Chalamet, like whatever age they had Dylan, and I read Chalamet's going to do all of his own singing in the film, which is incredible. Yeah, I'm very, very excited about that.
Yeah, but first we have to get through Wonka in order to get to the Bob Dylan Chalamet.
But he shot Wonka already.
Yeah, it's coming. I think it's coming in December.
I've talked to people who've seen Wonka. Well, I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Wait a second. So he has Dune and Wonka?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the year?
Yes.
Oh, correct. I was talking to Rebecca Ferguson today. I'm like, you have
what a
Mission,
name drop.
And then you have Dune.
Yeah, that's much better.
I was like, how do you feel about that? She goes, I'm taking a 10-week vacation to Mexico before all of that happens. I was like, or something like that, a 10-day. And I was like, she goes, I'm going to be like so booked. But I'm like, what an amazing. Yeah. Anyways, so
that's a great stretch.
Mangold. Yeah.
The second movie is the Dave Filoni movie. And the reason why I want to bring this up, because I find this really interesting, is because Filoni has talked about the fact that his movie is going to be that people started describing it at Star Wars Celebration as Star Wars' Avengers, because it's going to take plot threads that are currently happening on, and this is where Kevin gets into, you have to watch too much stuff to understand what's even happening, but it's going to take plot threads that are being laid out in The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka, and possibly even Skeleton Crew, and tie them together into one big movie. So,
wow,
it's a lot of homework.
What I'll say, I think we're a little jaded in that Star Wars fans are very hardcore. Star Wars fans 100%. Watch everything, and it's a religion. And I think there are enough of them to sustain Star Wars. And if there's anything wrong with Star Wars that they need to correct, it's that they were trying to recreate, you know, the original series on the big screen and not really and telling a story and giving people what they want. So
yeah. But Gabe, don't you think, like, and again, this is not to sound jaded, I love movies, I love Star Wars, everything. Don't you think there's a point where it's too much? Don't you think there's a point where they dilute it, where it's almost where it just gets like, it's like too sugary, it's too I feel like sometimes,
I know what you mean.
We've had Marvel now.
We've discussed it. I understand.
I want it to be more special. Like, okay, Jake, remember when Episode 1 came out? Okay, like, we're in a Star Wars world at that point where we have, you know, 3 movies. And then, but think about how special those episodes felt. Now, when a show comes out and a new movie's announced, it doesn't feel the same.
I think what you're reacting to is I think that it's just there's a larger picture that I think we're not. I think you're just looking at how much is there, and sure, there's a lot coming out. But what we're in the middle of right now is a sort of I don't want to use the word war. We're in a streaming war. We're in all of these studios, all of these distributors are trying to gain the mind share of consumers in this new era, which is still new.
Max is doing the same thing with Harry Potter and everything.
So it feels a little oversaturated, and it's felt that way for a long time, where they're trying to pump as much original content into their streamers as they can. And theatrical releases and these series are what's backing that up. Disney needs to compete with Netflix that's been on it for the last decade, and all of these other, look at Max, which is just taking all of their properties and the Discovery Plus properties and putting them into one. It's I think gonna taper off is my prediction eventually, because it is a lot and it is sort of too much. But what you're going to have is a backlog of content that they can justify $10 a month, $15 a month, or whatever. So I do think it's a temporary problem. But
you're right.
I think it's also a personal choice of, in that as a consumer, you have to navigate what you want. So it's like, are you Star Wars? Okay, you're all in on Star Wars. Do you just want to watch the Marvel movies and not the Marvel TV? Then do that. And I think for us, it feels a little daunting because we feel like we need to participate because it's our job, or whatever. So it feels like we need to have this large scope. But I think for the average consumer, definitely for the average consumer, but even the fan, I think that they're okay with missing what they feel like missing. And if enough people recommend it, maybe they go back. Like, I don't know that it's as overwhelming for most people. I think they do an easy job of picking and choosing.
But like when Sean brings up the Filoni movie, I'm like, all the shows you have to watch those to understand Filoni's movie.
I gotta be honest. My issue right now with both Marvel and Star Wars, and this, Sean, I'm curious as to if this was at all a subdued topic of Star Wars Celebration, isn't the amount isn't the quantity, it's the quality. Like to me, the dip in quality on Mandalorian this season is astonishing. The dip in quality on most of the Marvel series, on most of the Marvel films, astonishing. If they were pumping out, but if they were pumping out high quality things week after, like when Mando was at its peak and we were excited about Boba Fett before it came out. I would make a point to get up every morning before work to watch these things so that I didn't have it ruined for me. And now I'm 3 weeks behind on Mandalorian because I don't care, because it's not that great now.
But I'll give you an example of something outside of the frame. I feel that way about Ted Lasso season 3.
Ooh, interesting.
The episodes have been okay.
I've seen people online destroying season 3. I think I think they're okay. To Jake's point, though, I think it goes hand in hand. I haven't seen Ted Lasso season 3, so I can't comment on it. But I like it. To Jake's point, like, I would argue that my point and your point go hand in hand. When you have too much content, you lose focus on the quality. It's like the way I would put it is like this: the reason why In-N-Out Burger isn't on the East Coast, in my opinion, is because once you start venturing out across the country, you start losing the ability to control. Well, I know it's in Texas, but it's not on the East Coast. But you lose the ability to control the quality of your content, of what you're producing, because it's in too many hands. There's too much going on. There's too many stores. There's too much to handle. So it dilutes the quality. And I think
Taco Bell.
I do love Taco Bell, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think the point I'm making and the point you're making go hand in hand. I think that the quantity is what's affecting the quality.
So
yes, I mean, absolutely.
It comes down to, is stuff being written because it has to be written to fill a void, right, or is it being written because you ultimately want to write it? And right now, I think we're in a period where stuff is getting written because it has to be written to fill a need. But let me talk about this third project. Then I want to get your sense on how you guys all feel about this one. This one's by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. And like I said, it's going to be set 15 years after
who directed
Rise of Skywalker.
Miss Marvel series, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
All of it?
Really?
Or just a few episodes?
I think they had several directors on.
Okay. Yeah. And it's going to bring back Daisy Ridley. She is going to become the new Jedi leader who is building up a new stable of Jedi. And then is going to have to encounter some forces that take it down. We tried to get Kathleen Kennedy to commit to which of these three movies might happen first. Like, do they have to happen in a certain order? And this is how I felt. They brought Daisy Ridley back out on stage. She got the warmest welcome. There was a lot of themes of redemption in this Star Wars celebration. Hayden Christensen came out and again felt this, enormous wave of love at the Obi-Wan panel for people feeling that he did a great job as Anakin and kind of taking over the narrative that he bombed it in the prequel trilogy. We got Ahmad Best, who got a spot in The Mandalorian and sort of got to play a Jedi. No, he didn't come to I didn't see him at Celebration. But just that idea that, he got another shot. He got a second shot after having to play Jar Jar Binks forever. And now he gets to play a Jedi on The Mandalorian. And then Daisy Ridley, who I thought was completely undersold in the trilogy. Like that character had the potential.
The sequel trilogy is going to be, I think, just like the prequel trilogy, more forgiven in time. Like people forget how, like, whenever people got off or like on hating on the sequel trilogy, they sort of all of a sudden felt like they always loved the prequel trilogy. And I remember sort of sitting there going like, all the people who are ragging on Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, like 5 years ago, you hated Jar Jar Binks and Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Like it's so in 5-10 years, everyone will be fine.
Okay. Well, anyway,
I don't know if I'll ever forgive the thought of horny Palpatine in my mind. So that's what the Rise of Skywalker gave us.
Joke's on you because that's your nickname in my phone.
My point being, if they don't make that movie with Daisy Ridley, I will be furious because they trotted her out on stage and gave her a hero's welcome. And then if you
Ask
get an
Henry
announcement
about that,
exactly, dude, that's exactly what I'm thinking about.
I feel like this has to be it. I feel like we've gone through like 2 rounds of this, will they, won't they? And it's all been sort of colored by the reception of the sequel trilogy and sort of the stops and starts of Star Wars. I feel like given that it's been so long since we've heard news and all we've heard is like, we're not doing that. This feels like they're finally like, all right, here's 3 things. And we're
I'd feel better if they had years on them, like at least release.
No. Why would you? But don't you feel better that maybe they don't put years on it because they're like, well, write the movie and then we'll put a year on it. Like, what if that's what we're finally getting?
Well, don't announce it until you write the movie then.
Well, no. I mean,
they're forced to announce it because of it's a celebration.
They're not going to have Star Wars Celebration for another
something.
2 years. Yeah. And I think that, if the movie's greenlit, the movie's greenlit. I don't know. I feel like we've definitely on this show complained about like putting the release date before you even write the movie.
Sure, yes, agreed. So, definitely. All right.
Has anybody ever asked Kathleen Kennedy directly why they didn't map out that last trilogy?
She's been asked that a couple of different times, and she said, I forget her answer. She has a canned answer as to why they didn't. But she says they have. She said that they did, essentially. But
that might be one of the biggest fumbles.
The fact that J.J. Abrams was like making stuff up on the set of Rise of Skywalker implies that they didn't. The fact that, Daisy Ridley has said that they were going back and forth on who Rey was on the set. So that implies they did not plan out the full trilogy.
It's pretty bold.
That's a detail. I think that's
a big detail.
Sure, but that's a detail compared to where these characters are going to go from A, B to C, which is I think as far as a plan you would go for.
I feel like you're sleeping on the part of that detail involves her being Rey or being Palpatine's granddaughter, which I guarantee you was not thought of.
Sure, but I think that's a bad choice that you can make 3/4 of the way through the movie that you don't need to make on the first one. Like, I think that's just a bad choice that they made.
Sure.
How much of it is, I know a lot of it is Ryan went in one direction and he probably should have been part of a bigger team discussion with his movies. But how much of it is that they lost Carrie Fisher? Do you think Carrie was going to be a significant part of whatever
definitely changed the last
episode
movie.
9 was going to be?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's actually a good point.
We keep forgetting.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. All right. Of the 3, James Mangold's biblical epic Jedi movie, Dave Filoni's Avengers Endgame, or the Charmine's future Rey project. Jake, which one do you really want to see? Which one is the one that you're circling and saying, please make this?
Honestly, Mangold's Star Wars equivalent of Year One. The concept of like, who was the very first person to say like, ooh, these midichlorians, I'm tingling. Okay. Like, I want to know that origin story of like, and also like 25,000 years before, like that's what we need to do. Like, break away from Skywalker, Skywalker adjacent stories, and it's a big galaxy out there and there's a lot of time in a galaxy far, far away. Like, take me somewhere else.
Because the movie ends with Yoda. The standalones like Rogue One and Andor, they've all been in this time frame, essentially. They haven't really gone too far. Kev, which one interests you the most?
I mean, just from a purely filmmaking standpoint, is Mangold. I just am excited by him because I feel like, listen, we haven't seen Indy yet. It looks great. They might have finally gotten the de-aging thing right, hopefully. But yeah, I just feel like his filmography is so solid. And again, I'm down for anything. I'll watch anything, but Mangold, his name is what makes me excited about it. Mm-hmm. It just worries me because as the 6 names you mentioned that were announced projects that, have fallen through the cracks or still might be happening, still might not be happening. I just don't know what to believe anymore. I feel like I just don't, I can't let myself get excited until I see a trailer or something.
You're sitting into the thing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I want to very quickly run through footage that they showed in the panels just to give you guys a preview of what is to come. Because there's a series coming in 2024 called The Acolyte. It's Star Wars. And it's set during a time period on this Star Wars timeline when the Jedi were at their height and the Empire was severely broken. And it's way before A New Hope. And I think it's even before the prequel trilogies. And this one, to me, of the footage that they showed, looked the best.
Oh, interesting.
It looked like a samurai movie.
Ooh.
Like a feudal samurai movie, but Jedi. And there's multiple awesome shots throughout it where it's just like the way you'd see an army of samurai, like the way brandishing their things, but it's like all of that, but with lightsabers. It was pretty ferocious. And this was like following on the heels of Kathy Kennedy when she said, hey, we're looking at this timeline. And one of the things that interests us the most is where are the Jedi on every point of this timeline? And so the Acolyte's going to take place at a time when they are in there. They're most powerful at that point. So yes, Jake.
So correct me if I'm wrong, isn't an Acolyte like a Sith apprentice?
Yes. And Amandla.
So this is pre-Phantom Menace when Sith were at their weakest.
Yes.
And the Acolyte is sort of the apprentice of the Sith as they're trying to find power again.
So this wasn't confirmed, but I heard this as a rumor from a group of people who I trust. Amandla Stenberg is the main character in the Acolyte, or one of the main characters.
I like her.
This was not confirmed, but I was told that she is playing twins. She's playing each version of twins. One is a Jedi and one is a Sith.
Awesome.
And the show will be how they rise up through the ranks and compete against each other. And it looked great. I mean, that looked tremendous. And
that's cool.
Cannot wait to see what comes of the Acolyte.
Did you see any footage of Carrie-Anne Moss in this?
Yes, some, not much.
You know what she's doing?
No, not enough in the footage to really tell, because this one's not coming until 2024. So it was really a cut.
Well, that's
together.
A cool addition. That's cool.
Yeah, she should be great. We did see a lot of Ahsoka, which is coming in August.
How does that look?
Dawson. It looks really good. Rosario Dawson looks like she's fully in the role. You kind of, this is where it gets to be, you either do your homework or you're into this world already. There's a lot of characters from Star Wars Rebels that are getting live action interpretations in Ahsoka. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is going to be playing a character called Hera. There's an actress whose name I forget is going to be playing Sabine, who's a main character from Rebels. And it's building up toward this confrontation with this villain whose name is Grand Admiral Thrawn. And they announced that Lars Mikkelsen, who's Mads Mikkelsen's brother, and was the voice of Thrawn in the animated series, is going to play him in live action as well, too. So the action looked terrific. It looked similar to some of the best Mandalorian type episodes. And that's coming in August. So I'm very excited for that. Star Wars Visions. I'm into the idea of this Star Wars Visions. It's essentially they have found 8 to 10 animation houses from around the globe and have given them each the opportunity to tell a short film in the Star Wars universe. In Visions Volume 1, it was all Japan. So it was like all Japanese interpretations of what a Star Wars story would be. After that was well received, they were like, okay, we're going to blow it out. Now we're going to get a South American animation team, and we're going to get a South African animation team, and then a California team, and have them come at us with what would your idea of a Star Wars movie be? And they showed us one of them, which was by the Aardman animation group, the guys who do Wallace and Gromit. So it was a Wallace and Gromit short, but with Star Wars characters. Yeah, they did stop motion animation, And it was essentially
claymation.
No, they are not in it, but it's modeled the same way. Like once you see the animation, you'll realize it looks exactly like
I want to see a Wallace and Gromit with lightsabers.
That's what I love about that series, which is so cool, is that the visual style of the episode is done by those artists. Like they're going there and they get to do their style, not only in the storytelling but visually, which is really cool.
So the Japanese one was heavily anime influenced, but then you saw in this volume 2 where they showed us a bunch of footage, it's animation styles from all over the globe. And so some of them will look very close to anime almost, and then some will be like this bulbous, claymation type of Aardman short. And
that's very cool.
They all look really cool. And one of the things about that, we were talking about because, what's that character's name? Who's the X-Wing fighter who's really famous?
You talking about the J.J. Abrams' friend?
Luke Skywalker.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to remember it in time. God damn it. Well, he showed up in the Aardman sketch, and it prompted us to ask the...
Wedge?
Yes, Wedge Antilles. Thank you very much. To ask the creators, can you use legacy characters? Like if one of these animated companies came to you and you invited them to participate in this, could you make a Han Solo short that just like ruined canon, essentially? Yeah. And they were like, no, we wouldn't let you do that. But if you wanted to use somebody and it fit into the mold of your story and it didn't mess with things too much, then you'd be able to do it. Because I guess apparently I didn't watch all of volume 1, but like Jar Jar Binks and Jabba the Hutt and Boba Fett are in one of them, and it didn't really mess too much with the canon.
Is Wedge's first name Iceberg?
No, it's not. Thank you for asking. It's it's Wedge O Cheese. Wedge O Cheese.
Oh, jeez. I do like an iceberg wedge, man.
So the last show is Skeleton Crew, and this is coming from John Watts and one other producer But this was my concern. It's following 3 to 4 young kids who get swept up in a Jedi adventure kind of deal. They were really sketchy on the details. But the problem is like 15 or 16 times throughout the very short panel, they used the term Amblin. They just wanted to make you feel like, hey, we're trying to do an Amblin Star Wars thing. Hey, Amblin. Hey, remember how Amblin made you feel? You know, when that logo comes up and you just feel like something Amblin is coming. And I was like, you better stop saying this.
At one point, they just leaned forward and went, you love Steven Spielberg.
And then they rode a bike across the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
On stage.
Can I quickly read the directors on this series, though? Because that's, having not seen anything from it, that's kind of the coolest part.
Oh,
so they have John Watts, of course, the Daniels.
Oh, yes, right.
Which is awesome. David Lowery of Ghost Story and The Green Knight. Bryce Dallas Howard returns. Yes. Lee Isaac Chung, who did Minari.
Oh, wow.
And Jake Schreier, who is doing the Thunderbolts, did the series Beef, which Jake says he loves. And a movie called Robot and Frank, which I loved. That's an incredible list of directors.
Okay, that is really good.
And you're telling me that you're going for an Amblin style. All of those directors could pull that off.
Well, David Lowery also, from a kid's point of view, did Pete's Dragon.
Yes, exactly.
Wendy and Peter, or Peter and Wendy, whatever the new one that's coming out that they just showed the trailer for. So, all right,
that's David Lowery.
Yeah, that's David Lowery, and it's going right to Disney Plus. It's his follow up to The Green Knight, and it's not even getting theatrical distribution. But Beau is Afraid is 3 hours and is going to IMAX. Figure that out. I'm seeing that next week.
It's a family movie. You got to remember, Disney Plus is like.
Oh, I thought you meant Beau is Afraid.
Bring the whole family. Bring the kids.
So anyway, that's my big takeaway. I was very excited for The Acolyte. I think Ahsoka looks really good. Visions looks fine, and Skeleton Crew didn't do much to move my needle. But Gabe's right. That director's list sounds really solid. And how about we throw it to a break? And on the other side, we'll review This Week in Movies. And we are back. So this week in movies, The Pope's Exorcist is getting a wide release from Sony. You guys might have seen some commercials for this. It stars Russell Crowe as based on true story, real life exorcist who works for the Vatican. I guess he practiced in like the 70s and 80s. Is that the case, Jake, when he was primarily doing it, or for many years after that? Because
the movie takes place in the 80s.
Takes place in the 80s, and
he claims to have performed over 100,000 exorcisms in his lifetime, which seems like a lot.
Hard to do.
William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist.
The power of Christ compels you. 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 The power of Christ compels all of you.
Like
gotta go.
Can you do it over email?
Yeah. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Send.
He's got a MailChimp subscription.
100,000. That doesn't sound possible.
The subject line is, does the power of Christ compel you? And you click on the email that says yes.
You sell out one soccer stadium and you're most of the way there.
You know? The power of Christ compels all of you.
That's my review. That's my review. It's over. This is a missed opportunity not to come out over Easter weekend, to be honest with you. I mean, that's counter programming at its finest. I thought that Russell Crowe was really good in this. I liked him a lot playing this part. He's doing there's two things that he has to do. One, he has to actually perform in the exorcisms. The main story is that a young boy gets possessed by a spirit, a demon, and starts to torture his older sister and his mom, essentially. And there's a lot of times when Russell Crowe's character gets confronted with the details of what could potentially be a demonic possession, and he figures out how to pierce right through it by asking the person questions that, you know, the person wouldn't know and they can't answer it. But then when he questions this boy with similar logic, the boy is able to turn around like really personal details about Russell Crowe's character and make Russell Crowe's character start to believe that maybe there's something going on here that is bigger than him. And the issue is that once it gets to all of the Exorcist stuff, it's a regurgitation of everything you've seen in every sort of exorcism movie. It's a person in a bed writhing around, spitting out curses at a priest. It's a priest trying to perform all the same rituals that you've seen before. He's got an assistant priest whose faith wavers at the worst possible time. It's the family who's, breaking down. The movie does, to its credit, start to explore a little bit something bigger when it gets into the fact that the location where the exorcism is taking place might have more to do with it. And I want to stop there because there's some other secrets that are hiding in the film. In general, I'd say it's fine. It's definitely not one of the better exorcism movies I've seen. I think it's kind of average, and it's unusual that Russell Crowe chooses to be in this at this stage of his career. I think he could probably choose better material, but because he's in it, I think he elevates it to the point where it's worth watching if you want to go check it out. I never found it scary. Never once was I scared by what was happening in this movie. And so if the point is to sort of freak you out, and even, because you could do an exorcism movie, you can do some really funky things where you're just like, all right, that's unnerving, and I didn't need to see that. It doesn't even go that far for me. And so I thought it was okay. Perfectly fine. Jake, did you like it more than me?
I think I'm about on the same page. I found myself entertained for the first two acts while fully acknowledging that this was everything that we've seen before. But I did think it was a well-made version and a well-acted version of what we'd seen before. And so I kind of thought, okay, I'm into it, and the whole thing with exorcism films is that you're meant to believe that many of them have a foot based in reality, if that falls under your faith and that's something that you believe in. And as I'm watching, I'm going, sure, maybe, cool, possibly. And then the last act, which is full of CGI demons breaking out of the ground and all that's
100,000 of them.
100,000 that he exorcised all at one time. But yeah, the final act, which was just chock full of CGI monsters, just made me go, oh, okay, I'm done. I'm out.
The Pope's endgame became.
Yeah, honest to God, it really was.
But the boys did see Renfield. And so, Kev, why don't you kick it off and let us know how the Nicolas Cage vampire film Renfield is?
This is an interesting one because there's so much in this film that's really well done. But I think the biggest problem with it is it doesn't tonally know what it wants to be. Okay. And so I think at the end of the day, when you have a film that's tonally misunderstood, some of the violence or some of the bits don't hit the right way. So everything kind of feels confusing. On a positive note, Cage is incredible in the film. The practical effects used for his makeup effects, the teeth, it all looks amazing. I thought Schwartz was great. It was a very different character for him. I thought that.
So who is he playing? If he's not Renfield, what does he play?
Schwartz's character, correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, he's like, there's like a mob type family that's involved in the storyline, and his character's trying to, like, essentially encounters Renfield and tries to kill him, right? Okay. Jake, I mean, is that the right way to put it? How else would you explain it?
You explain it far more exciting than it is in the movie.
Yeah. And so his character, like, is trying to impress his mom, and his mother is involved in the whole mob aspect of that family, and Renfield comes in contact with him, and that connects those characters, and so that creates the drama in the film. Yeah, I mean, like, I think it was shot well. Beltrami's score is great. The filmmaking is great. I mean, like, the gore effects are awesome. It kind of reminded me of the end of From Dusk Till Dawn. A lot of the different type of, like, practical effects they have with the blood and the splattering and the gore. The issue, as I mentioned, is the tonal aspect of it. It doesn't feel like the movie ever knew what it wanted to be. So, like, you have all these incredible aspects of filmmaking that are thrown in, from performances that are great, and so you see some of the practical effects, and even the CG works really well. And then you just have a movie that I don't really fully know. As I left the theater, I'm like, what were they trying to do? I was always confused in a scene how I was kind of supposed to feel emotionally about what this moment was. And the concepts, you know, I will give it credit for what it plays with. It plays with the idea of narcissism and this concept of, you know, wanting to and taking ownership of your own life, and it deals with the idea of being in a bad relationship and not knowing how to get out of it. And that's kind of that plays into the comedy aspect. Certain moments when Renfield will go to, like, a group therapy and, like, get advice, and they don't know that his boss is actually Dracula. So that those things actually work. But then I just didn't know tonally that the film overall knew what it was. So I thought it was fine. There's a lot of great things in there, but it just didn't work overall for me.
Jakey, a little more?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Cage's performance is infinitely better than the entirety of the film. And I think that sort of kind of leads into my issue, which is that the strongest thing that the movie has going for it, which is the relationship between Renfield and Dracula, the relationship between Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult, is a secondary plot line. It's kind of put in the back seat for large chunks of the film. When the film starts and it's about them, I thought, cool, like, I'm in this. I dig it. It's fun. They have great chemistry. I like the play on this relationship, if you're familiar with the novel or familiar with the 31 film. But then the film diverts. Dracula kind of goes away for a while. It's sort of set in the back burner, and Renfield enters this plot line with a cop played by Awkwafina, and a mafia boss played by Sheree Agudashlu, and her son, who has been Schwartz. And that just doesn't work. The plot's not interesting. It's repetitive. It's generic. And the whole time you're just going, just bring back Dracula. That's all I wanted. Yeah. Like, all I wanted was Nicolas Cage's Dracula. Like, why? Like, how are you making this so complicated? And even then, once they finally do, it's Dracula involved in this plot with characters that we don't care about. I really do think that, like, they started out with a really good core of an idea and couldn't figure out a way to make a 90-minute film out of it. So they had to flesh it out with this secondary plot that just doesn't work. And the two plots got lost. It's unfortunate because there is a kernel of something there. There is, there's a great idea there. And I feel like this was a first draft of a script that could have taken a few more passes. But the most frustrating thing is a few more passes really could have made it something special. So this is the most frustrating kind of a bad review I can give, in that it didn't have to be a bad review. It wasn't just a blanket bad movie. There's potential there that is wasted, and unfortunately, a brilliant Nicolas Cage performance is buried in a highly mediocre movie.
I still need to go see Air. Should I go see Air this weekend?
Dude, yes.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. You've been on a lot of flights.
Do you think they're just showing it?
No, you were in the air.
That was as bad as the wedge salad thing.
It's pretty good.
No, the wedge salad one was great. I'm gonna stand by that.
Jake, keep going as we head into our blend game, which is in honor of Renfield. We're playing #horror comedy blend, the odd mixture of thrills and chills and laughter. So where did you go for your horror comedy blend?
My pick is actually one of my favorite horror films of all time. I consider this horror comedy. You guys can push back if you want. An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, good call.
John Landis, an absolutely brilliant blend of what is genuine, true horror. I mean, a lot of times I feel like horror, comedy horror leans into the comedy aspect of it, with horror being the background. And American Werewolf in London is a terrifying horror film, but it is also like just so messed up that you can't help but laugh at so many aspects of it. Progressively, the friend who gets ripped apart and his progression as turning into the werewolf. I cannot say enough about Rick Baker's makeup and prosthetic work. Oscar-winning makeup and prosthetic work. I believe, Gabe, if you want to double check this, that An American Werewolf in London was the first movie to win the makeup Oscar. I could be wrong. But I recently rewatched this film last year, and we're talking about a film that's 40 plus years old. And it's still, we talk about this a lot because practical effects just age better than CGI. That is correct. So American Werewolf in London was the first film to win the Academy Award for Best Makeup.
Yeah, won the first competitive Oscar awarded in that category for American Werewolf in London, and is, according to this, I don't know when they wrote this. This is on the Oscars website. Record-holding winner of 7 Academy Awards for makeup.
Rick Baker,
out of 11 nominations. Rick Baker. Fun Rick Baker story. We were at the Critics' Choice Awards one year, and I was seated at the table for Big Hero 6, with the cast and crew of Big Hero 6. And a mutual friend of ours, Kylie, came over to me and said, "Hey, I love Big Hero 6. It was like my favorite film of the year. Like, it would mean a lot to me if I could sit with them. Would you trade seats with me?" And so, like, when it's something that important to someone, you go, "Sure, of course. Where are you sitting?" And she said, "Next to that guy with the ponytail." And the guy with the ponytail was Rick Baker. And I said, "Okay, I just want you to be aware, you're giving up a seat next to Rick Baker. Like, I want that seat, but I want to make sure you're aware who you're." Yeah, she's like, "Oh, I don't care." So I turned into Chris Farley the entire night. I was like, "Remember that time?"
What was he there for? You know?
He was there. He lost. I remember. Okay. What? Come on, my God! What was he there for?
I wonder.
I'll come up with it after the show. But he was very kind. He was brilliant, and the blend of, and I think one of the reasons I do love An American Werewolf in London so much is because I think it's a really solid 70-30 split, with 70% being horror, truly disturbing horror, with a fun jolt of comedy in there, just enough to make it, I think, under the umbrella of horror comedy.
Okay. Kev, where'd you go?
I went with The Cabin in the Woods because
cool answer.
I just find this movie, like, again, comedy is an interesting word to use, but it is a film that, I guess, in that percentage that Jake is talking about, that has aspects of comedy, especially the character who, if spoiler alert, if you've never seen the film, just, don't continue listening if you haven't seen it. But there's a character in the film that survives the movie because he smokes weed. Yeah. And that's the entire reason he's
sort of like It Follows. It's where it flips the, where with It Follows, where like you have to have sex in order to survive, which it used to be the opposite.
So I literally just showed this movie to Brendan a week ago. We watched it last weekend, and the lines from that stoner character are so funny. Like there's a moment where they find the Latin passage in the basement, and he goes, "I'm drawing the line here. Do not read the Latin," because he knows everything that's going to happen to them.
Dude, that character. So for people who haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, it to me was probably the most mind-blowing film of that type of genre since the first Scream, because it was just so. It just played with the world and the idea of horror, but in a very unique way. And Drew Goddard just directed the hell out of that film. And I think, like, Chris Hemsworth, I mean, this was a movie that I remember reading sat on the shelf for years. I think they shot it.
He shot it before he was Thor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. And then it came out, and I'm like, this movie was sitting on the shelf. Like, it is so incredibly amazing. I remember, because doesn't Hemsworth, again, we're in spoiler territory, forgive me. Doesn't Hemsworth's character die while trying to ride off the cliff, and he gets hit by the wall?
The digital wall.
Yeah. He has like this big dramatic line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great. Like, don't hold back on his speed. He goes, I never do.
But I will never forget the look on my face during that elevator ride scene. There is just like going to Jake's point about the shocking horror aspect of it. That scene is so terrifying, but also so weirdly over the top. It just finds this perfect tone because it's so insane, but it's also really disturbing and very scary. But for some reason, it's like weirdly highly entertaining. Yes. Watching the characters go down the elevator, and then Sigourney Weaver at the end, like I just love that character. I love that moment. I love that decision. I'm a big fan of movies that present a huge moral decision like that. I always find it interesting. Oh, yeah. Like you think to yourself, what would, what are you supposed to do in this situation? I just really found that film to strike a tone that I haven't seen. And Richard Jenkins, whole character, who's the other actor with him?
Bradley Whitford.
Bradley Whitford.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Who was great in Get Out as well.
Whenever I see him, I always think, aside from the West Wing, I always think I would have voted Obama a third time.
That's what he says. Yeah, and Get Out. Yeah. But the whole, so like, that's the thing. There's so many layers to that film. Like the beginning, it plays off like an old school, like horror film. They're getting ready to go on a trip. They go to this cabin, and then you deal with this concept of Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford's character who are behind the scenes playing games with these people. I mean, it is such a layered and very interesting film, like, and great performances from everybody involved. Like, it's a really, and like Chris Hemsworth's character, as I mentioned, there's a scene in the woods with him and his girlfriend that is so terrifying and so brutal. Like, they really do like lean into the disturbing nature of what they're dealing with, but at the same time, 100%. The cutbacks to Jenkins and Whitford are just so funny that it's just, I don't know, they found a perfect tone of horror comedy with The Cabin in the Woods. One of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie.
Great choice. Great choice. All right, I'm going old school, and I picked Monster Squad, which I just adore. Monster Squad is a great entry drug for your kids into horror. If you're trying to figure out the right type of movie to show them, it is a group of kids who are fascinated with horror creatures, horror films, which is something that I was as a kid growing up. So I loved seeing characters like this portrayed on screen. And then due to a curse that is unleashed, all the classic Universal monsters come back in modern times. It's Dracula, it's Frankenstein, it's the Mummy, and these kids have to band together in order to stop them. It has the attitude of the Goonies and a bunch of other these sort of late 80s where the kids were pretty smart and the adults were really stupid. And they have a terrific culmination at the end of the movie where they need a virgin to read German, essentially, in order to stop this portal from opening and sucking up the entire world. And they get this teenage girl to read it, and she reads it and nothing happens. And they're like, I thought you said you were a virgin. And she was like, I am. And she's like, that one time it didn't count. And they were like, what do you mean it didn't count? It was like the most pivotal moment of the movie where she had to read it. So they end up getting this little girl to read it because she's 6 and is able to read German and shut the whole thing down. It's just fantastic.
I've never seen Monster Squad. I've never seen this movie.
It's so funny. You'd love it.
Jake, have you seen it?
Yep.
You'd get a huge kick out of it. It's terrific.
All right, I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's really great. I think that I'm not sure if Shane Black wrote it. Shane Black might have written Monster Squad, but it's great. If you haven't had a chance to see it, check out Monster Squad. Terrific blend of horror and comedy from an old school perspective. Audience picks. Carolina Mishura says The Menu, going with a recent pick. Jose Munoz said Beetlejuice. Ariel Pace said Ready or Not. And then there was a ton of love, although I think Gabe might have manipulated the audience with his GIF choice. It's GIF with Shaun of the Dead. A lot of people went with Shaun of the Dead. And that includes C. Harlow and Bubba and Matt Caron and Harry Lichtman and many. Not that it's a bad choice.
Honestly, I thought one of us would choose it.
Shaun of the Dead is an excellent choice.
I want to give a quick shout out to Fran Kranz, who plays the stoner character in The Cabin in the Woods. He ended up going on to direct a very serious drama that we all did press for called Mass.
Terrific.
Which was a really serious drama about school shooting and the characters involved and the families. And Mass is a really, really good movie. Just very hard to watch. Very, very, very brutal. But
well, you can't pick Mass for next week's blend game because we're playing hashtag Sam Raimi blend. And Sam Raimi did not direct Mass, unfortunately. But he did direct a lot of other classics that you will have to choose from when you decide what your choice will be for Sam Raimi Blend. So you can let us know via email at realblend@simmonblend.com, or you can tweet us on social media at #SamRaimiBlend.com. Jake, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, can I do a shameless plug?
Of course.
And in conjunction with Evil Dead Rise.
Wait. I need you to do this plug full of shame, please.
Oh, trust me, it is.
Michael Fassbender style. Go ahead.
In conjunction with Evil Dead Rise, I interviewed Bruce Campbell the other day, and I just went through a long list of stories and urban legends I've always heard about the Evil Dead. Basically, it was like, I've got 10 things that I've always heard about this movie, weird things that happened on the set or off the set or whatever the case may be. I'm going to go through them and you tell me if they're true or not true. And if not, give me the real story. And he was great about it. We went through every single one, and some of them were true and some of them were not true. And some of them were better stories than I could have even imagined.
That's awesome. That's a really
Did he talk about Bubba Hotep?
We did not. We did not talk about Bubba. But if you're a fan of Evil Dead, check out my YouTube channel, my interview with Bruce Campbell.
There you go. All right. That is a shameless plug. Our next premium episode, as teased earlier in the show, is an IMDb game. Well, where can listeners continue to follow everybody? Just go to social media. We are at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, at Gabe Kovach, and the show is at Real Blend. We'll talk to you guys next week with a brand new episode dropping on Friday with probably some interviews, some heavy duty reviews, and more charm from all four of us. Talk to you then.
Duty. Oppenheimer.
Barbie.